Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Gerald Sharp, and I'm the president of the Federalist Society student chapter at the Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to SOC Sidebar, brought to you by the Federalist Society Student Division and the FedSoc chapter at my law school, Catholic University's Law School, right here in the nation's capital. Each month, the student division and a rotating student chapter host a Zoom series called SOC Sidebar, featuring a judge being interviewed by a student chapter president about the judge's passion, hobby, or interest, and how that interrelates with the law. Tonight is our fifth SOC sidebar and features Judge Lawrence VanDyke of the Ninth Circuit, who will discuss physical fitness. It's my honor to welcome and introduce Judge VanDyke. Lawrence VanDyke serves as a circuit judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Prior to that appointment, he served as a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Environment and Natural Resources Division of the United States Department of Justice. Before that, he consecutively served as the Solicitor General of two Western states, Nevada and Montana. At the beginning of his legal career, he worked as an attorney in the Appellate and Constitutional Issues Practice Group at Gibson Dunn. Judge VanDyke received his law degree magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, where he was an editor on the Harvard Law Review. He has engineering and theology undergraduate degrees and a master's degree in engineering management. He served as a law clerk to the Honorable Janice Rogers Brown of the D.C. Circuit. He and his wife Cheryl live in Reno, Nevada, and they have 3 grown children. Welcome, Judge VanDyke. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Gerald. It is great to be here. I love these events that FedSoc does. Ones that and the crew that are doing the student chapters worked on. So big thank you to Peter and Brom, who I know works behind the scenes on all this stuff, and also to you for putting this on. You can hear from my voice that I am not doing well. I've been sick for about a week and a half now with this sickness, and for about a month with a variety of sicknesses. And so I am struggling with my voice. I haven't worked out in like a month because of all this sickness, and I'm also currently on steroids. So I feel like I'm somebody who doesn't exercise and I'm on steroids. So I don't know why I'm talking about physical fitness, but I'm going to try to fight through this. If at any point my voice just gives out, I'll just start trying to do sign language, which I don't know. But anyway, thank you for having me. Super excited to get to do this with you, and we'll have a fun time.
Thanks, Judge. We hope you're feeling better, and we're really excited that you're here. So for our audience, here's how this is going to work. I will ask the judge some questions about fitness and how that relates to the law, and then we will have some time for audience Q&A. So please use the Zoom Q&A feature to submit your questions. You must be logged in as a participant in the Zoom webinar to do this. When we get your question, we will see it and read it aloud at some point during the session. So with that, let's jump into some Q&A, Judge. So tell us about your fitness journey. Were you always interested in fitness growing up? What sparked your initial involvement in fitness?
So I grew up in Montana, mostly in the western part, but some years in the eastern part. And the closest thing to describe sort of the way I grew up was what you might call a farm lifestyle. We weren't actually on a farm, except for those years we were in eastern Montana. But we had a lot of farm animals, milk cows, milk goats, sheep, pigs, chickens, all that. So a lot of chores, a lot of outdoor activities. We did a lot of outdoor hunting and fishing, did a lot of snowmobiling, and so we were very active. Oh, and like rode dirt bikes and stuff quite a bit. So very active, but no, we had no like literally zero sports emphasis. We didn't play any organized sports, and we didn't really consider what we did sports at all. So so it wasn't until I later went off to boarding school, a little Christian boarding school in Canada, where my parents sent me off to in grade 10, when I actually sort of got involved with organized sports. So very active, but no fitness, I guess you might call fitness, until then.
So what sports did you play when you were in boarding school?
So mostly I played basketball. That was when I was age 15, and I was already 6'6" at that point. I did not weigh what I weigh now. I weighed 160 pounds, so I didn't do a lot of posting up. But I played basketball on a very small team, and we actually ended up my senior year. We actually went to provincials, which would be the equivalent of going to state here. So had a lot of fun, it was a really good experience. But that was pretty much what I played was basketball.
Do you have any takeaways? A big part of this conversation, Judge, is how this interrelates with the law in your life. So do you have any takeaways from that experience you want to share with our audience?
Well, I think probably the biggest impact that had on who I am today and my work and everything else is that, as I said, since I hadn't played any organized sports before that, I really didn't have a lot of emphasis on teamwork and very much of what I had done before that. And so I got my real big first lessons, I think, in high school basketball. The school that we were part of was very small. I think our team at one point was down to 6 players, like literally only had one extra player beyond what we had on the floor. And so, and even a full complement was like 9 or something like that. So, and most of the players, most of my classmates at the small school played hockey, and hockey and basketball are the same season. So, um, we had a very small team. The only way we were going to be able to win was through teamwork. And so, that's where that's where I first learned about that. And I have one sort of, I guess, anecdote that kind of that kind of gives a story about that. I remember we had a tournament, and we got to be pretty good, especially my senior year. We got to be pretty good. We played well together. We had this another kid who was I was the point. I was not the point guard, the 6'6". I was the center. We had this kid who was the point guard, who was very good, also from the States. And I remember that the coach pulled me and him and maybe one other person in order to let some of our bench players play because we'd gotten ahead during this tournament, and our lead slowly dwindled, and eventually we ended up getting behind, and we weren't able to pull it out. We lost the game, and I was so mad about that. I remember we went back to the locker room, and I actually talked back to the coach about that. And for my troubles, I got punished and suspended, both from the team for a short period of time and even from the school, because this was a little Christian school and they were fairly strict. That was a real turning point for me. I learned there that I needed to like work on my attitude and teamwork and learning to defer to leaders even when you don't agree with them. I also learned the importance of sincere apologies and like actually being sincerely repentant. And later, fast forward to the end of the season, we went to provincials. As I said, to go to provincials, we had to win divisionals, and we won divisionals. That last game in divisionals that we won because starters, a couple of the starters fouled out. I can't remember if I was one of them. It might have been me, one of them. And we put in our bench, and a couple of the starters on the other team fouled out, and they too were a very small team, and we were playing little teams, and they put their kids from the bench, and our kids from the bench were better than their kids from the bench, and we won that game. So the coach was right in what he did at that tournament, and his strategy, and so it was just a really good lesson for me in teamwork, things like that.
Thanks for sharing that, Judge. That's great. So after, high school, you went to college. Did you continue playing sports in college?
Yeah, I competed playing, but I didn't play on like the college team. I went to a smaller Christian university in Oklahoma, and I learned that basketball players in the South were much better than basketball players in the middle of Manitoba, Canada. But I still played intramural basketball. But what I really got interested in was competitive taekwondo. So I started doing that when I was in Oklahoma City, where I was for 3 years. During those 3 years, I don't know if you count this as a sport or not, but I pursued my wife and convinced my wife Cheryl to marry me. And once I convinced her to marry me, I sort of drug her back to Montana. And once I was back in Montana, I took up skiing and snowmobiling again. But while I was down in Oklahoma, I did the Taekwondo thing, which was a lot of fun.
So, Judge, I don't know much about Taekwondo. So tell us about your experience with that.
So this was before UFC, right? I remember watching the UFC stuff back when it came out and being blown away by it, right? This was before the UFC. I uh so I decided I wanted to do some martial arts, and I thought I wanted to do I picked Taekwondo. It seemed kind of flashy and cool, and this was competitive, full contact Taekwondo. So after practicing for a while, I started doing local and state tournaments. And actually, my third year actually did well enough in the state tournament that I went to compete at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta, Georgia, which was kind of a pretty cool experience. So it was a lot of fun. It was, I was a young college guy, and I at the Georgia Dome. So just so you don't ask, I did not do well. I lost. I can't remember if I won any of my matches. I may have won my first match and then lost everyone after that. Or maybe I just think that to make myself feel better. I lost them all. In any event, I did terribly, but it still was a lot of fun. I mean, for a young guy to get to go there and with my club, and so anyway, that was awesome, and it was obviously very good exercise. That's basically what I did for exercise.
So I'm sure you didn't lose all your matches, right? I mean, did you ever, any cool moments from Taekwondo? Did you ever knock anybody out or anything like that?
I actually, yeah, well, okay, so I actually did. I'm glad you asked. But that was like way at the beginning. I mean, that was my first year I was doing it, and I was a yellow belt. And I went to one of my first, it was either my first or one of my first matches. And so I got matched up with this young guy who was also, we'd been doing it for like 6 months or something. And I did a turning hook kick, and I'm sure it was wild, out of control, and looked terrible, but it connected. And a turning hook kick is a pretty powerful kick, especially a 6'6" frame. And I ended up knocking this poor kid out, which I was both super excited about and also felt horrible about, because especially at that belt level, they're not usually knocking people out, and everything ground to halt. And anyway, everybody was fine. We wore helmets, and he was fine. So that was like, probably the high point for me at Taekwondo. I didn't knock anybody out but I kept from getting knocked out, at least at the nationals. So um, so that was probably pretty much the coolest thing I did.
So, any larger life lessons, any takeaways from your experience doing Taekwondo you wanted to share with our viewers?
Well, it's not teamwork, obviously, but I guess there's kind of like two related things about Taekwondo that I think were kind of important. Was I suppose, at this point, a listener may be thinking, man, Judge VanDyke wanted to fight people, but that wasn't actually, well, I don't know if I've ever had like a really strong desire to actually fight anybody. Um, it was more like I felt this sort of like, I would call a philosophical idea that everybody should work on their ability to protect themselves and others, not because they should have to use that. In fact, they should avoid having to use that. Sort of a Christian idea that you should turn the other cheek, but at least like you're turning the other cheek because you are making a conscious decision to, not just because you're a weakling that has to or something. I don't know. So I kind of had this view that you should be able to develop the skills to defend yourself and others, and then use those appropriately. And related to that, I don't know if I thought this at the time, but I definitely kind of think this now. And I kind of applied this to my kids later on. I do think it's not a bad thing for for pretty much everybody to, at least at some point in their life, and it probably should be in a controlled environment if it can be, but to be standing in front of somebody who like legitimately wants to take you out, and have to try to keep them from doing it, or you have to deal with that situation without just panicking, right? And it's obviously a very terrifying experience, but it's also, I think, very real and clarifying. And I think it kind of empowers a life skill of what we might call fortitude or courage or something like that. Like that you should be ready for adversity, like genuine adversity, like somebody is actually trying to do something bad to you, and you need to do what you can to try to stop that. And the reason is we live in a fallen world, and whether that's physical or not physical, conflict and aggression is going to come, and I think it's important to have that kind of fortitude and courage. And this is probably the same way that physical training, can be good for other things, develop discipline for other things. This sort of having courage and fortitude in the face of physical adversity can kind of help teach you to have it maybe in other circumstances. That's my theory. I don't know.
That's great, Judge. Thanks for sharing. So you also mentioned snowmobiling and skiing during this part of your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's what when I went back to Montana, I stayed doing Taekwondo for about a year. They had a nice big club there on campus at Montana State University. but it just wasn't very interesting. We didn't compete and stuff like that. So um, I got into skiing because I took skiing as a I believe it or not, having grown up in Montana, I'd never skied. But so I took a class, a PE class, and I was able to get really cheap, like it was very cheap tickets to go up once a week and ski at Bridger Bowl, nice little ski hill outside of Bozeman. And so I would go up there and we had an instructor and we had the equipment and everything all wrapped into a pretty low price. And so I did that for a semester while my poor wife was working, putting me through college. And I stopped by at her work on the way and I'd be like, hey, hon, I'm on my way to class, and head up to the ski hill. But I did that, learned how to ski and got good enough. It was fun. I got good enough to ski most of the mountain and skied off and on for years afterwards. But that kind of died away because I also got into snowmobiling, which I had done some before when I was younger. And my dad and I got these like really hot backcountry snowmobiles, Polaris RMKs. And if you've never done that, it's a little dangerous because those suckers are powerful. But like places you can go in the backcountry and get stuck if you're not careful, and then nobody can find you. But the places you can go is crazy, and it's a very physical thing if you're doing the kind of riding we did, because you have to ride your snowmobile very aggressively. So that was super fun. And I did a lot of that for years, basically all the years until I went off to law school.
That's great, Judge. So I know you do some lifting now. Did you start lifting back then, or did you get into that later in life?
So, so I got into lifting around this same time, until I got married and about the time I had my first kid in like 2000, I think. No, I guess my first kid was born in 97. But, around that time, like maybe 97, between 97 and 2000, I um I finally started to put on weight. Before that, I was like 160 pounds in high school. I think I got up to like 186 pounds. I remember I was 186 pounds when I fought at the Georgia Dome. So when I got married, I was like, no, maybe I was 192. I can't remember. It was real close. I was 6'6" and barely in the heavyweight division or something like that. So I was pretty skinny guy. But it's something about getting married, you start to put on weight, I feel like. I don't know if that's scientific, but that was my experience. And so I I started well I put on weight and I started lifting weights. So I went and bought a weight set and I bought it at Costco. And it's a pretty nice weight set. It was like it had metric weights, which was kind of funny. So instead of 25 pounds, it was 22 pounds, 10 kilograms, and instead of 45 pounds. But it was nice iron plates, Olympic bar, had a bench and had a rack that was big enough that you could do squats on it. So I got that and I used those quite a bit. And got in it basically weightlifting all the time and been doing that basically since. So I guess it's like 25 years. Then my dad had also built a new house and put in a racquetball court. Business was good at the time, and uh, and so we would play racquetball. And so we did that, and then we decided we start doing some tournaments um, there in Bozeman. They have these local tournaments. So I go to these tournaments, and I play with my dad and a few of his friends, and we get these tournaments, and I learned a real lesson. So here's a lesson that's a good life lesson about that, which is things are not always how they look, which is probably a lesson you can learn from a lot of things. And I'm sure at the top echelons of racquetball, everybody's like super fit, like they are in every sport. But at the level I was playing at, we'd go and we'd see these like dudes that were not super fit. They were portly, large, overweight men, and like middle age or older. And I think, man, I was young and athletic. I think I'm going to smoke these guys. And when you get in there and they just kill me, and they stand in the middle of the court, wouldn't move at all, and they had excellent ball placement and just crushed me every time. So the lesson was that things don't always look like they seem. Never underestimate your opponent. It is a really good lesson that's kind of stuck with me through the law. And even to this day, you hear people talk about, oh, so and so's against us, they're idiots, they're terrible, blah, blah, But the reality is, I don't think you should ever think your opponent is an idiot, or I think you should approach every case as if your opponent is a genius. And then if you're ever surprised, you'll be pleasantly surprised, right? And even if they try to disprove that theory early in the case, don't let them. Like, continue to treat them like they are very, very good litigators. And you won't. I see so many people, they underestimate people all the time, and it's part of the human pride thing, I think. So racquetball sort of taught me, I guess, in a very visual way, like don't do that. So that's my lesson from racquetball.
Judge, that's a perfect segue into talking about law school. So after that part of your life, you went to law school, obviously a notoriously busy and hectic time. I could attest to that as well. So how did your fitness routine change, or how did you keep up with your fitness routine when you were in law school at Harvard?
So it was a challenge. That was, I brought this fitness equipment with me all the way from Montana to Boston. Drove a big old U-Haul all the way over there, and I put the weights up in my little home office we had that had essentially the weights and my desk and with my laptop, and I would work out. I'd work in there, and the kids would come in. By now we had two. By the end of law school, we had three, and the kids would come and hang off my weight stuff and pretend to do weight stuff with their weight, bringing something in and pretend to, while I was, trying to get daddy's attention while I'm doing stuff. So I worked out. I thought about trying to work out at the law school, but I already was away from the kids so much because I was on law review and you had to do so much of that at the law school. It just was a busy time, and I think a real lesson there that I learned is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I wasn't able to work out near as much as I wanted to. I think I started using the treadmill more there too, because treadmill felt like a way I could get, in 20 minutes on a treadmill, I could get a halfway decent workout, and so I would try to do that. But that was, the long and short of it is it wasn't what I wanted it to be. I did play basketball at law school. I got on law review. I don't think I did the first year, but I got on law review, and then law review people were like, "You're 6'6". You must be able to play basketball." So, I was like, "Well, I can play a little bit." So I went and we played intramural basketball, and it was a lot of fun. But other than that, I kind of avoided the team sports because I was just more time away from my family and tried to work out at home as much as I could.
That's great, Judge. The Law Review at Catholic University does not have an intramural basketball team, but maybe I'll try to change that. So right after law school, Judge, you went to Gibson Dunn and a clerkship with Judge Brown on the DC Circuit. Obviously, I can imagine those were very busy times. So how did your fitness routine? How did you balance your fitness routine during those periods?
Yeah, kind of more of the same issue with law school, except for maybe worse. And so it's probably a good time for a public service announcement for all the law students like yourself, Gerald, to say, as bad as it is now, it gets worse when you get out and practice. So the thing that made it particularly challenging for me was that we had a larger family, so we lived further out. So we ended up living, I had a commute of over an hour each way. So with that, I did not want to try to, get home late and then, not spend time with the kids, spend another hour plus working out. So I would, sometimes try to run on a treadmill after the kids went to bed. We bought a treadmill around this time, I think, from Costco, same treadmill we've got today. And so would try to get on there and bust something out. We had a different treadmill that had fallen apart in law school. So I bought a treadmill and would try to bust in a really good one and try to bust some stuff out there. And we worked out some. I think probably the lifting took the biggest hit for that 2 years I was in DC because of that commute was just killing it. So that was a particularly low time. I did try to run outside a little bit, but it's horrible in DC. It's so sweaty. I mean, it's so muggy. I would sweat all the time. So but that just, I did lift though. I did lift, but not as much as I wanted to.
I could definitely attest to the DC heat for all our non-DC viewers here. So you mentioned lifting. What kind of lifting were you doing at that point?
So this time, at that point, by now I had a pretty established routine, right? So I did bench press and either lat pull downs or pull ups. Mostly lat pull downs back then. I didn't start doing pull ups much till later. I just put heavy weight on lat pull downs and I'd get up to like 220 pounds or something on my crazy lat setup. I'm surprised it didn't break. And then I do bench press. And I got into doing, I was doing flat bench, but then I started transitioning into incline bench because I kind of had the idea that, well, then I don't have to do shoulder presses. I can just do instead of doing flat bench and shoulder presses, I can just sit in the middle. And so I would do bench press in the in the middle, and then I did what called French press. I think tries and buys. I do French press and curls, and I would do basically squats, lunges, and mostly squats and lunges. A little bit of Bulgarian split squats or something like that for legs. But honestly, I was kind of a cheater on legs because I counted the treadmill for the legs and the other stuff for the upper body. I don't think that's appropriate way of working out, but that's what I did for years, and then I had to correct it.
It's funny that, bench pressing now that you're a judge. Yeah, I think that's a funny that's a funny
Yeah.
thing. I'm
Oh,
glad you're
okay. I see what somebody put that up there, and I was like, bench press. I don't get that. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, I don't do bench pressing anymore. Now that I'm a judge, for reasons that we'll explain later, maybe. But yeah, sadly, but
already too much bench related things.
yeah,
So
exactly. I've got my daily dose of bench.
so Judge, your career then moved to Dallas. You mentioned running, you mentioned lifting. Did you do anything else in Dallas fitness wise?
Yeah, so when I moved to Dallas, started doing some more lifting, started because I live closer to work and more routine. I was there for 5 years. So, and I got into, I'd run in the house, a similar problem to DC and the hot and muggy. I started running more outside. I just got a little bit more used to the hot and muggy and just put up with it. Or I'd run more in the not hot and muggy part of the season, right in Dallas. But the other thing I've been out of martial arts at this point for quite a while, obviously, the Taekwondo thing. But I remember I said that I thought it was good. I kind of developed this idea that it's good for everybody to have had a point in their life where somebody wanted to punch them in the face and they had to stand up to it. So true to that philosophy, I decided to take my young kids. My two oldest kids were, my son was, I think, 11 at the time, and my daughter would have been 8. So I put the two of them in martial arts. But by this point, I was watching UFC, and UFC had become a much bigger thing, and I thought I need to put him in MMA. So we found this MMA gym. It was actually Guy Metzger's Combat Sports Club, and they had this fairly big kids program. So I put our kids in MMA, which sounds funny, and they go in there and they load them up with all this gear, and they just pound on each other. It sounds horrible. Maybe something to get arrested for, but if you were there, it's not like that. So it was a lot of fun to watch, and I would go. My wife might take them there, and I would pick them up. Say, if it was the right hour, or on a Saturday, I would go and sit there with my laptop trying to do work while watching my kids out there rolling around doing, trying to armbar somebody or something, and it was fun. I liked it, so I had my kids do that. Anyway, I liked it, but I sit there and think, man, this would be kind of fun. I should be doing this, I could do this. And so eventually I signed up, and I ended up doing it for 2 years. I ended up doing, and it was a mixture of, not you usually didn't do it together. You'd either do the rolling components, so the BJJ, the jujitsu type part, or you do what we called stand up, which was more like the Taekwondo part. And then, sometimes we put the two together, but not very often. So it was a lot of fun, really good practice.
So, Judge, you mentioned the Taekwondo thing again. You knocked somebody out in Taekwondo, but did you knock anybody out in MMA like you did in Oklahoma, or did it not fare as well?
Um, no, I did not. The opposite happened. So I guess I should have full disclosure. Um, I got choked out by somebody. So we were rolling all the time, and you get put in a submission hold or a choke, and you tap, if you couldn't get out, and so that happened all the time. But I was with this guy, and he gets me in a guillotine, and it was like a pretty good guillotine. And I was thinking, I might have to tap. I'm going to keep fighting this, and I'm going to tap out if I need to. And next thing you know, I'm waking up on my back, and the whole, then everybody's standing around us, and my little 12-year-old son or whatever is like, "Dad, you okay?" So I'd gotten passed out, and I thought I didn't feel that coming at all. I thought you'd like start to feel the world go dark, and I'm sure it does sometimes, but it didn't for me at all. So No, I didn't knock anybody out. I got choked out at one point, and that was like, what do you call that? The low point of my martial arts career, I guess. So, I guess I will say one more other thing. I do think I use this with my clerks all the time. I think jujitsu and I don't do this anymore, but like I don't do martial arts anymore, but I think jujitsu is a great metaphor for the law, at least litigation, because the thing I love about jujitsu is what drew me to it. It's why I like watching like a MMA fight. Um, the thing I love about it is that it teaches you to think. One of the things it teaches you to think non-linearly. Just because somebody pushes you, you don't push back, which is maybe what your natural instinct is. Instead, you maybe try to use their momentum against them, or you try to move sideways or something, and that's just very important. I think litigation skill. There's a lot of things that if you do them correctly in litigation, have a metaphor. It could be you could use jujitsu as a metaphor for that. Look for opportunities to try to take the opponent's strength, something strong about their case or something like that, and try to find a way to use it against them, respond sometime non-linearly. And you see it as a judge, and it's kind of fun to watch because you go, oh, I think that's very good litigation strategy on that person's part.
Thanks for sharing that. Did you discover any other sports when you were out in Dallas?
The other one was that I got into was shooting, was shooting sports. And it's probably the reason I stopped doing MMA. The I grew up obviously doing hunting and recreational shooting. I gotten out of that when I went off to law school. When you're in Boston, and I just kind of been with the busyness of having children and working and all that. I just I had guns, but I didn't do anything with them. And then my wife made the mistake of buying me a rifle for Christmas one year, and she's probably regretted that decision ever since because I just kept on getting more and more into it. And it turns out there are action shooting sports that you can do, which are super fun. And I got involved in that. And like as you can tell from the name, they have action. You're not just standing on a shooting line and shooting, but you're moving all over the place. They're very dynamic. In fact, they range from some action to they now have these things called tactical games, which is basically like CrossFit and shooting, got married and had a baby or something like that. And it's like you run all over the place shooting, and then you pick up kettlebells and I haven't done tactical games. I've done some of with that run and guns type stuff. I'm a little terrified and intimidated by tactical games, but I might try it out. It's coming to Reno in November, so I might try it out if I can get over the sickness. Anyway, been a lot of that's been a huge amount of fun, fairly active. So I guess it counts as fitness. That's what I tell my wife at least.
Well, we'll keep us posted on that, Judge. That sounds like a lot of fun. So, the next phase of your life, as I mentioned at the intro, you were the SG of Nevada and Montana. Obviously, those are highly coveted roles in the legal profession. They're high stress. They're high profile. Tell us about your fitness routine during those stretches. I think you served in those roles for 6 years by my count. So
yeah. So, um, I kept lifting. The lifting was kind of just a baseline thing I was doing the entire time. Running has always kind of seems to have gone up or down, and I got more and more in the running. There was wonderful trail running opportunities in both Montana and then here in Nevada, and so I kind of got into outdoor trail running, and I even did it during the winter. You just end up getting gear for that, and you suit up and you get stuff for the ice and when I moved down here I got into some longer distance running, even in Montana, up to nothing crazy long, but uh, like 7, 8 miles or something like that. Then I got down here, and my deputy solicitor general here was an ultra runner, I found out. And so we ended up coming up with this plan, and I trained up to run this ridge that runs alongside Lake Tahoe. So I ran 23 miles, right, it's like at 9,000 feet. Um, uh, and you run all, you got Lake Tahoe almost the entire time. Beautiful run. So I did that, and so that got me into like running longer. So that was kind of a thing for a while. And it's good that long distance running. Get a lot of solitude, so you get a lot of time to think about things. You takes discipline. Like if you're going to run something that long, it's like training for a marathon, I guess. And so you have to come up with a plan how you're going to train for it and stick to the plan, even on days or mornings that you don't feel like getting up, right? And obviously that has important benefits for, any career, certainly a legal career.
Absolutely, Judge. So then you came back to DC to work at DOJ, the Environment and Natural Resources Division. Tell us, you were back at DC. Were you running outside? Were you working out at home or at DOJ? Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
I got reminded about what I told you earlier, which is, holy cow, it's humid there. So I would run outside. I had that problem that I'd had before, which is this time again, I lived a long ways away. So with the long commute, working out at home didn't work very well. So I'd come in early and then run on the mall, which is fun. It's beautiful. And during certain times of year, it was wonderful. But other times of year, you run and I couldn't stop sweating for like 2 hours afterwards. So I was doing fairly long runs on the mall as a holdover from my long trail running here in Nevada. And then I kind of got shorter and shorter. And then I would work out at the main. It's one of the times I transitioned from working out in the basement. I mean, sorry, working out at home to working out at work, because right below me was the fitness center for Main Justice, and it was really nice. And I just would work out there some days a week. So that's what I did while I weights in Main Justice and running on the mall.
And now you're a judge on the Ninth Circuit. So tell us how your fitness routine is at this point of your life. Do you work out with other judges? Do you work out with your clerks? Tell us about that.
No, no other judges. None of them want to come here and work out with me in Reno. I'm all alone here, but and the clerks I keep them too busy. So they don't got time to work out. They got to get the stuff, the work done around here. No, I've always been kind of a work out by myself kind of guy. My wife likes doing group exercising, and I'm more of a workout. And so the great thing is I basically have a lot of the same old workout routines. I do what I call lifting, the weight component of it. I actually do that here in my office. Um, uh, and uh, and then because of the travel and stuff, that can make keeping a routine challenging. But having the weights right here in my office, obviously, it's as close as it's ever been. And so I lift several days a week. I only run about 1 day a week, and my runs have gotten real short. My legs are starting to feel it after we're 50 years old. So try and keep the knees alive as much as possible. And then the one thing I've added is something what you might like CrossFit or a high interval, high intensity interval training, hit style workouts. I do those now 2 or 3 times a week, where you take things like kettlebell swings or burpees, push-ups. You kind of mix a couple of them together. They have things you can look up on the internet, and you'll do something for like 12 to 18-minute type workout. And I found those to be really, really effective style workout in building an endurance and strength. And so I do those too. So that's sort of the 3 different types of things I do, and I'm able to do most of that right here in my office. And what I've learned is that, and this doesn't come natural for me, and probably doesn't come natural for most Type A personalities that do our kind of stuff in law, is that at this phase in my life, I need to go easier. And if I'm going to do those hit workouts, I need to go easier. I think, CrossFit has this reputation of people getting injured all the time. And I think they get injured all the time because they push it too hard. And if you need to have a self-discipline and just tell yourself, don't push it too hard. You won't get injuries that way, and you can actually move the next day. So.
Judge, if you don't mind me asking, you mentioned that you have your weights and that in your chambers and that you work out in your chambers. If it's possible to do it with the camera, would you mind showing our audience here your gym setup and chambers?
Yeah, hold on. You switch this to, okay, so this is my chambers here. So we've been sitting here in front of this. Okay, would like to unmute you. Unmute me. Okay. Okay, sorry. Right, I think it's been muted. Right, so those are my chambers here where we've been sitting. And really beautiful chambers I got here. And massive office they gave me. And so they gave me this big office, and we were downsizing at home. So what we decided to do was move all my workout stuff. You'll see my jumping box here. And this is that old bench that I bought at Costco 20 some years ago. Got my my dumbbells here. These are the old metric weights I bought at Costco, still use them. Got I'm trying a little something new with deadlifts to try to not hurt my back. This is called a reverse hyper. This is for all the you got the old Fetty night frights events there. This is my rack. I splurged so recently. This was not what I bought at Costco years ago, but this is my rack here with the weights on it. So anyway, that's what I do. That's what I've been doing here, and that's been really nice to have. Now, I should tell you, the court did not, just so nobody files some kind of complaint. That's all my own weights or whatever. I bought those all in. Okay, I'm going to try to transition back here. So.
Good to know that the Ninth Circuit doesn't supply weights to their federal judges, but maybe one day. Judge, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm muted here. I'm gonna say I don't know if it's that awesome. But if they did, it probably wouldn't be very good quality weights anyway. So I should be thankful.
That's great. Thanks so much for showing that to us, Judge. So I wanted to ask, and this is a perfect way to sort of, I think, end our discussion. I'm the president of the chapter at Catholic University. We're obviously a religious institution. You've your faith and your family at different points of this conversation. Turn the other cheek. I just wanted to open it up, and do you have anything to say about your own faith life and how that's related to fitness and the law or anything else?
Yeah, so I think I asked somebody to put the little Bible in that little the little graphic that they created for this, just because and the reason for that was because of course it puts a little more weight on the weight when you put your you've got a big King James Version Bible on top of the weight. It puts a little more weight on there, but no, the real reason I wanted it on the bar was that for me, and I'm pretty honest about this. I think I try to my sort of religion and religious worldview is sort of the foundation for everything I do, and I think is related to everything I do, and it impacts everything I do. Obviously I think that's in a positive way, and I think it's a grounding force for me. A big part of that is I try to have a devotional or a prayer time on like a daily basis. So in a lot of ways, there's a relationship, and it's very common. I think people will tell you with religions to have a daily devotional time, right? And if for fitness, you're trying to have a daily fitness time. You're trying to, and as a young person, for me, developing the discipline to do those, eat both of them on a daily and regular basis was so hard, right? And so there's a lot of relationship there, in 1 Timothy 4:8, the Apostle Paul actually ties those two things together, and I think is trying to say that like the same kind of discipline that you try to develop for like physical fitness can help you a little bit in your spiritual life, trying to have the discipline that you're trying to get in your spiritual life, and vice versa. They're not unrelated, right? He says, for physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things. And later on, in one of his other books, he talks about compares like the spiritual journey, being a Christian, to a race, right? And so I do think that putting aside time for your physical health is really, really important in the legal division, in the legal profession. Law is really high stress, and I mean, people talk all the time about all the burnout there is, and I think it's well known that working out is a good way to sort of charge those back. Contentious confirmation process, fighting and losing a very grueling state judicial election battle. I could tell you it's really important. There were times when I stopped working out, and I shouldn't have. I should have kept exercising. And I think the same thing could be said for your spiritual life. So I just think that discipline is really good. I try to tell my kids, like, go exercise. It's good for teaching you the discipline that you'll need for other things, and particularly for your spiritual life. So I do think there's a relationship between those two things. There's a saying that I'm too busy today not to pray, which obviously is a little bit non-intuitive at first, but like it's basically saying the more busy you are, the more you need to be praying. I think the same thing could be said for physical fitness for lawyers. We're all very, very busy. And if you're too busy to be getting regular exercise, then you're too busy not to be getting regular exercise. I think is probably a very accurate thing to say.
Absolutely, Judge. Thank you very much for sharing that. I do have one other question for you. You mentioned at various points, having to, needing to stop or stopping, another moment where one might be, prompted to stop working out is when they're injured. So I wanted to ask you, were you ever injured at any point, and how did that impact your routine?
Yeah, I mean, you work out, you get injuries, you get, just from shooting, doing my shooting sports stuff that we talked about briefly, I pulled my calf. This was not that long ago, and I know it's probably about 9 months ago at this point. But I pulled my calf, and almo- and it felt better after about 6 weeks. So I went back into it. You do a lot of hard cutting left and right. And so I went to make another cut, and it's actually a little rip in the calf. That's what you end up, they call it a strain, but it's actually a calf tear. And I tore it again. And I talked to some other guys. And it turns out there's been a spate of these happening amongst a bunch of us. And we just were coming back. We're all like, a lot of us are a little bit older, and we're just coming back too fast from that. And it feels like it's healed, but it's not. So you do have to, like, especially as you get older, you got to take the time. You get injured, you get those little injuries like I'm talking about. You got to take the time. The other big injury I had was, and the reason I don't bench press anymore, I mentioned I don't bench press anymore. I was bench pressing a couple years ago with my wife in Scotland. We were on vacation in Scotland. The hotel we were staying at had a really nice, like, Gold's Gym type big gym that you could go and use for free if you're staying. So we were going to do first we're going to do some lifting and then do like a small CrossFit type workout. And so we're doing the lifting part, and I decided I'm going to do bench. Well, I hadn't done flat bench in forever. I like literally in a decade. But that's all that they had available. So I go and I set up, and I was just going to do the same routine I normally did, which was bench up to 245 and do that like I did do 6 to 10 reps of 245 a couple times would be my high end. And I was going to do that, and it was feeling kind of weird and everything, but I'm like, a flat bench is supposed to be easier than incline bench. And when I'm doing that, and the second press up, it just snaps. I felt something pop, and the thing collapses. My wife Cheryl was spotting me, so she's holding on with two hands on, like, over here, and the bench is down on, or the bar is on my neck. It's her hand and mine. It was, and she's like yelling, and finally some Scottish dudes came over and put the bar back up and gave me some whiskey or whatever. And they didn't do that part, but I had pulled my pec off my arm, and so that required them to do surgery to put it back on. It pulls your tendon right off your arm bone, and it's fully recovered now. But it was 6 weeks of immobilization and 6 months to get back to where I could supposedly do full strength. But I just had never gone back to doing bench because I'm over 50, and I'm like, I don't want to pop my pec off my arm again. So I hope that does not ruin anybody else's workout aspiration. But I just do a lot of push up. I'll do incline. I don't know what you call it, but where you put your feet up on boxes and do push ups that way. But anyway, that's what I do now. So you do get older. You do got to take it more easy. But much like this amazing podcast or whatever thing we just had, you got to do it all the way till the end, even if it gets bad towards the end, right? So.
Absolutely, Judge. Well, that's all the time we have here. Thank you so much for joining our chapter here at Catholic and doing this talk. I think it's great that judges are trying to access, people on a different level other than the law. we're really excited to have done this, and just thank you so much for your time during your busy schedule.
All right. Well, thank you, Gerald. No, this is wonderful, and I always love getting to be able to do these things and study hard and do really well at school, and don't not work out.
Thanks very much, Judge, and thank you all of you for tuning in. The next month SOC Sidebar will be held in February and will feature Judge Nalbandian and the Rutgers Newark chapter, and they will discuss whiskey and cigars, which is another great topic. And you can register for that at fedsoc.org/sidebar-6. Thank you very much again to Judge and to all of you. Thank you.